Proverbs 22:5 says, "Thorns and snares are in the way of the froward. He that doth keep his soul shall be far from them." We live in a world that praises the froward, but there's a difference between those motivated to act wisely and aggressively toward good ends and those who just go full blast into whatever it is they're doing with no thought about whether it's really the wise thing to do. The froward is thoughtless and reckless. Ultimately, the froward is self-centered, even though through such frowardness is not usually self-beneficial. Hence, that's why the froward is spoken of as being foolish. We discussed the reality of Proverbs 22:3, and again it'll be repeated in Proverbs 27:12, that a prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. The froward is not prudent. The froward doesn't look beyond the moment in order to see what sort of trouble lies ahead or what sort of bad consequences he or she will incur. And sadly, many times the froward gets others hurt. That's the warning found here in our proverb. Thorns and snares are in the way of the froward. He that doth keep his soul shall be far from them. I was once out riding bikes with a couple of other kids in our neighborhood. This is going back, 40 years ago. I'm getting old. And one of these kids said, "Hey, let's ride over here." And he pointed to this wooded area at the end of our street. But it was dark. It was one of those nights where there was a new moon, so it was completely moonless, and it was cloudy, so you couldn't even see the stars in the sky. And it had been one of those nice, unseasonably warm winter days, but that means it had gotten dark around 6 p.m. I was allowed to stay out until about 8 p.m. and ride my bike up and down our dead-end street, so that gives you a little background to the situation. Anyway, this kid wasn't real bright, and I knew that there were some thorn bushes in those woods, and also knew that there were things like holes and branches and things that, we couldn't see, and we'd just go flying off of our bikes if we went riding back into there. But that kid and one of the others headed off into the woods. The two other kids, including my kid brother, just looked at me, and I said, "They're crazy. I'm not riding through that stuff in the dark. I'm going to just stay on the street." So we started to turn our bikes around and head back to the street, and we heard the sound of those two running into those thorny bushes and flying off their bikes. We could hear crunching sounds and groans. They came up out of the woods walking their bikes out, and under the street light we could see that they were cut up. Their legs and arms were cut. One had a cut on their cheek. Their clothes were ripped, and they were still stinging. You could tell they was still in pain from it. At the time, this proverb didn't come to mind, but it certainly made me think back on that memory as I read it. Thorns and snares are in the way of the froward. He that doth keep his soul shall be far from them. Far from the thorns and snares, far from the froward. That's how you stay out of the thorns and snares. Don't be following the froward. It's people who, I think my dad used to say this, can't see past their nose. And that, you think about that. Because we're supposed to be able to wisely look in the way that we're going and make wise choices based on what we see. So me and the other two who stayed out of the woods, we kept our souls and kept our bodies from suffering the thorns and snares that resulted from riding off into the woods in the pitch dark. And that's a good lesson in life. Don't go riding off into the dark, following after some froward fool. You'll just get yourself hurt or worse doing so. And we would do well to remember the words from the pen of the Apostle Paul. He spoke, and his words taken down. The inspired words of God of 1 Timothy 6:11. But thou, O man of God, flee these things and follow after righteousness, godliness, faith, love, patience, and meekness.